Every day, people in our region are being unlawfully transported or coerced into work they didn't agree to. It falls under the term human trafficking. Often it involves sexual exploitation. Today, we're going deeper into the concept of human trafficking to separate myths from facts. This comes ahead of an event called I Have a Name. It's being planned for Human Trafficking Awareness Day next week. To peel back the curtain on who is being affected, we're joined by Bianca Colaluca. She's with the Windsor Essex Counter-Exploitation Network. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for making your way into here. Now, before we continue our chat, I wanted you to explain to our listeners a recent change in terms from trafficking to exploitation. Why is it important to make that distinction?
Yeah. So over the last couple of years, we've seen a big shift in the literature primarily with working with victims of violent crimes. With human trafficking and exploitation, we've seen exploitation being utilized more. The reason is because it encompasses a larger spectrum of experiences. A lot of times, too, when you're coming across somebody who has been a victim, human trafficking holds a big punch, right? You say to somebody, do you think you've been human trafficked? Sometimes they can be like, no, 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 no. But if I say to somebody, do you believe you've been a victim of exploitation? It typically opens a larger door to have that conversation about what has been happening. In our name in particular, we used to be known as We Fight for over 20 years. We changed it to We Can. The acronym is actually WECEN, and it has exploitation within the name. And so that just reflects kind of where things are going in the literature and how we are able to help our clients.
Because when we typically think of trafficking, I think there is a notion of somebody being moved to locations, whether coming from Detroit into Windsor or down the 401 corridor. But that's not necessarily, and that's not the majority of the people you work with.
Right. So typically, a person can actually be trafficked without ever leaving their own community, right? That's also why we're going more so towards exploitation, is because it is when somebody is coerced, manipulated, and defrauded into participating in something that they are not consenting to, or possibly have been consenting to initially, and then that consent is revoked. With the 401 corridor, it still continues to be our biggest avenue for individuals actually being transferred. And Windsor is such a hub because we're the end of it, right? A lot of people believe that it's the U.S. border. Borders are more so utilized with foreign nationals being brought across. However, with actual sexual exploitation, we're seeing more so the 401 corridor.
What is the current situation with the 401?
So a lot of times we are seeing individuals brought from Toronto to Ottawa, back to Windsor, all within a couple of days. Just to kind of give you a guesstimate of what caseload is looking at like right now at Weekend. Between myself and two colleagues, we roughly see about 150 cases that are open within a year. And that's including labor trafficking, sex trafficking, and marriage trafficking.
Yeah, because usually when we have these conversations, we're talking about those being sexually exploited, which is an issue, but you're also talking about labor exploitation as well.
Yeah, so labor and marriage are something that we do see quite often, labor more so. Just for context, marriage trafficking, a lot of people get that kind of confused with arranged marriage. Arranged marriage is a cultural practice between two consenting parties. Marriage trafficking is when one or both parties are not consenting to this marriage coming forward. Labor trafficking, we see a lot within rural communities and here in Windsor, Essex, and primarily, but across all industries as well. It continues to be a big issue where foreign nationals are defrauded. They are brought here from extremely impoverished and violent communities. They're kind of sold this dream that you're going to come, you can work here, you can support your families, and when they come, they typically are faced with conditions that are not as were promised.
What are people telling you when you meet them, and what type of danger are they in when you come across them?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that, anybody who's in a vulnerable state or possibly even has precarious immigration status, it just continues to heighten everything, right? So we're talking poor living conditions. We're talking lack of access to health care. We're talking maybe no access to stable or affordable housing. And for those experiencing labor trafficking, no fair compensation and no pay for overtime, right? As for those experiencing sexual exploitation, we come across clients when they are at any stage. They could be fresh into getting connected with the community and seeking that assistance. It could be somebody who was trafficked years ago. It could be somebody who is currently being trafficked and planning a safe exit.
How successful are people getting out of these situations?
It's dependent on the situation. We have had quite a bit of success that we are super proud of. The individuals that have experienced this type of exploitation are extremely dedicated toward their own rehabilitation. I want to make that kind of very clear because although we're assisting them in that rehabilitation journey, that is their journey, right? So we take their direction. We're here to provide them the resources to help them get access to the services that they might need, but their choice and their autonomy is completely restored in that process. It's not Bianca telling them what should kind of be done.
Well, I do want you to tell us what can be done, because if people are listening right now and think, oh, maybe I'm in a situation where, you might be holding some of those answers, what's the next step or what's the first step for them?
Yeah, getting in contact, right? We're located, luckily, right in the core of Windsor. We're on 443 Olet, and we are very mobile. So we're able to kind of leave the office, meet somebody where it might be safe, and they get to be the trailblazer in that. They get to tell us, I'd rather meet here at this area of Windsor rather than this area. Getting in contact with anybody that they feel is safe, whether that is a community partner, whether that is an old teacher, whether that is a friend, a family member, whoever that might be, getting in contact and us just being able to present your options on how you can move forward, how you can be safe to the best of our ability is where we kind of want to start.
So it's been 20 years since we first heard of the program you're involved with. So how has it evolved over the years?
So 20 years ago was when our executive director, now Shelley Gilbert, who was the founder of the project, started it as almost a pilot project. So at that time, it was more so international cases that we were seeing of women coming over to Canada and being faced with, violence and sexual violence and interpartner violence. And over the years, we started to kind of see the shift in labor trafficking. We started to see the shift in individuals from Windsor being trafficked within our own city. So that shift allowed us to kind of advocate for more change, more resources. In particular, our team has grown. So when it started with Shelley's project 20 years ago, it was one person. Then it came to a project coordinator like myself. Now we have housing supports. Now we have a team out in Leamington. And we just continue to grow, which is really, really indicative of the great work that's kind of been done. Not to toot my own team's horn, but Shelley has done a lot. And Shelley continues to do the systemic advocacy more at the government sector. So continuing to fight for open work permits and things that decrease people's vulnerabilities in really high risk and dangerous situations.
You have an event next week.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of it? It's a virtual event. People can log on online. And who are they going to meet when they log in?
Yeah, so every year on National Anti-Human Trafficking Awareness Day, which falls on February 22nd, we host typically some sort of event. Last year, we did a very large symposium with a couple other community partners. This year, we are partnering with Hiatus House, and we are doing a virtual event. So when people are registering for this event, they're submitting questions. These questions are going to go to a panel of live survivors, people who have been participating with us, people who have been on the rehabilitation journey, and they're going to be answering those questions directly. And as we can all appreciate, this is going to be something that It's somebody with a lived experience telling us what has happened to them and where we need to go as a city, and legislative where we need to go, in order to reduce barriers and make services more accessible and hopefully put some prevention strategies put forward so that there's less victims going forward.
And how can people log on? How can they find out more information to make sure that they can be a part of this?
So if you check out any of the social media, so Hiatus House or our own, so WECEN, there are links on there. There's collaboration, and I believe there is an Eventbrite as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Bianca. I appreciate you getting up early and coming in today. Bianca Colaluca is the Anti-Human Trafficking Project Coordinator for the Windsor Essex Counter-Exploitation Network. The time is 7:22. Still to come, research is going on to determine what the effects would be if an oil spill happened in the Great Lakes. We're going to find out what kind of impact that can have in about a minute here on Windsor Morning.